If you're new to homeschooling or you're just doing some research on it, you might start to notice some different lingo and terminology and wonder what it all means. So I'm going to help you today to learn just really quickly the basics of these different homeschooling terms that you might hear to help you homeschool with confidence. So the first bit of terminology is going to be the different homeschooling styles. So I'm going to just give you really quick what each of them mean. First, there is traditional. The traditional style is basically like the classroom, but in your home. It's usually using textbooks and the teacher is teaching something directly and it's all coming from textbooks. There's often tests associated. There might be some different assignments that are much more like school. The second is classical. Now, there's two different camps of classical in general. There is the traditional classical and there is neoclassical. So things like the co-op classical conversations would fall under the neoclassical style. And then there are lots of classical Christian schools and classical Christian companies that are selling that type of material. The classical style is very much focused on Western civilization and the content of what is considered the classics. So it's very focused on literature and art and having a style of really mastering things before moving on to the next item. Dorothy Sayers is the one who was rejuvenating the classical movement in schooling. So you may want to look her up, but she is the one who explains the trivium a lot. The three stages of the trivium are the grammar stage, the dialectic stage, and the rhetorical stage. So that is a big part of the classical style. Neoclassical is also focused on the trivium, but it's more about the method of teaching with memorizing and using those classical methods, whereas the usual classical type of schooling is more focused on the content of making sure that children get the classics. So both classical and neoclassical use the trivium, but have slightly different priorities. Classical's priority is the content of what's considered classical, and the neoclassical is more focused on the method, which is really following the trivium closely. The next style is Charlotte Mason. So Charlotte Mason was a lady that taught in a one-room schoolhouse in the 1800s, and she had a particular method of teaching that you can learn all about. There's lots of books that she has written that you can learn a lot about, but basically it is teaching the whole child. It's using living books to teach children. There's a lot of going out in nature and letting nature be a classroom, and also having a wide feast for children, doing lots of different subjects and very short lessons. There's a lot of elements to the Charlotte Mason style. It is one of the main styles that we use in our homeschool. It's beautiful, definitely something worth looking into. Next is unschooling. Unschooling can sometimes have a bad reputation, but it doesn't mean just not doing any school at all. It's focused more on child-led learning. So whatever your child is interested in, it's going with that and really focusing on what the child is wanting to learn and doing a lot of things that are all about what the child is wanting to learn. Unschooling can be a good way to help your child be interested in school and enjoy school a lot more. Next is deschooling. This is what a lot of parents find that they need to do when their child is going from a school situation into a homeschool situation. So they may need a transition time where they're deschooling, where they're learning how to transition from being in the classroom all day, every day, into being in a homeschool situation. Finally, the last main style is the eclectic style. And as you can tell from the name, eclectic is when you're in your homeschool, you're mixing a lot of the different styles together. Maybe you're using a classical method when it comes to math, and maybe you're doing more Charlotte Mason when it comes to history. That would be more of an eclectic homeschool. So in my home, that's definitely where we've landed. We started very strong Charlotte Mason, and we eventually became more eclectic in the different areas of our homeschool, but you can decide what kind of style you want for your homeschool to be. It can be one of these, or it can be a mix, and it's okay. You don't have to be married to a single style. Some other terminology you might hear about are different learning styles. So just really quickly, there are different learning styles for your children, and you would want to pay attention to that and think about that when you're picking curricula and when you're deciding on your homeschool style. So some of those would be auditory, learning by hearing; visual, learning by seeing; kinesthetic, learning by touching and doing; and linguistic, which is learning by reading and writing. Those different learning styles are things you might hear about, and it's something that's focused on how your child learns and something you'd want to pay attention to. Most children usually have two main learning styles that they tend to learn best with. They can, most likely learn from all these different styles, but most children have two that sort of come to the surface as being the main styles of learning for them. Okay, next I'm going to cover curricula, lingo, and terminology. So first you might hear about a box curriculum. A box curriculum is where everything comes in one. It's very open and go. There's not typically a whole lot of planning that has to be done. It's just looking at the curriculum and seeing, what do we do today? And it usually has everything in it that you need. There's usually not a whole lot extra that you would have to purchase as far as curriculum. So there are lots of these that are really great. You can get these from Veritas Press. You can get some from Memoria Press. Those are both classical style. You can get some from Simply Charlotte Mason. They have some that are Charlotte Mason style. There's also My Father's World. It's kind of an eclectic mix of Charlotte Mason and unit study and classical. So that's a box curriculum. It's very open and go. The other way to do curriculum is to DIY it, do it yourself. So taking different pieces and different curricula, different subjects, and putting it all together. And that's a way that you can really curate your child's education and really customize it to them specifically. This is something that a lot of more experienced homeschooling parents like to do. And a lot of times parents that don't have quite as much time or just find it a lot easier to do a box curriculum, or who are just starting out, will do the box curriculum. Either way is great, and your child can get a great education, whether you're using a box curriculum or whether you're DIYing it. Next is a unit study. So a unit study is when you're going to spend a certain portion of the year learning about one specific thing. And you might incorporate a lot of different subjects into this one unit study, or you might make it all for one subject. So for example, you might want to do a unit study for science that's all about space. So you might start collecting some things for space. You might start looking at books. You might look for some videos about space. You might want to look into going to a planetarium with your family, and you might want to study it for, say, 6 weeks. So that would be a unit study about space. And I'm actually putting together a unit study about space that's going to be like the ultimate space unit study. So if you're interested in that, be sure to subscribe. That is a unit study. So you could also pick a book, such as the book Madeline, that a lot of people are familiar with. You could take Madeline and turn it into a unit study. You could base a geography lesson on Madeline and on Paris. In the book, it shows a lot of different places inside of Paris, like the Eiffel Tower and the Arc de Triomphe. So you could take all those different places and do a whole unit study, learning about that just from that one book. So that's another way to do unit study. Some other lingo or terminology you might hear would be a mastery curriculum versus a spiral curriculum. So what this means is your child is learning the different elements in their curriculum in a way where they're going to master something before they move on to the next thing. So that's mastery. There is usually some kind of review that still happens, but they're not going to move on to new concepts until they have mastered the first concepts. And then a spiral curriculum is when they're learning a lot of new things, but it's going to come back around and they're going to review the things that they've already learned. So that's why it's kind of a spiral. It's like they're learning a lot of things and then it comes back around to review and they're learning more things. So this is often used to describe different kinds of math curricula. So that is something you'll want to know if you're looking for a mastery curriculum or if you're looking for a spiral curriculum, especially for math. But that also can happen in other types of curricula as well. But it's good to know the difference. There are pros and cons to both ways, but now you'll know the difference and the terminology. The other style of curricula that is on the newer side would be online courses. So there are lots of companies that are now offering full classes online that your child can participate in. They can see the teacher, often the teacher in the class can see them, and it's much more like a traditional school, but it's all online. So online courses. I know Veritas is offering things like that. There's also BJU. They can be quite expensive, but it may be something you want to look into for older children potentially, or if you're limited on time and you need your child to be more independent with their learning, then that might be a good option. So there are lots of curricula styles. Hopefully this gives you an idea, but some of the curricula styles are more independent, where the child takes care of everything. They do all of their work. There's not a lot of hands-on teaching by the teacher. And then there are some styles that are much heavier focused on the teacher doing a lot of planning and teaching. So you'd want to look into that with your different curricula. There's a completely online math curriculum that you could look into. It's called Teaching Textbooks. So that would be something if you're looking to just completely outsource math and have it be something that's online for your child. You could do that instead of teaching math every day, for example. The next term you might hear is enrichment. If you're looking and hearing about different enrichment parts of your homeschool or ways to add enrichment to your homeschool, this is talking about art and music and different electives like gardening, woodworking, cooking. These would all be enrichments. It's ways that you're adding richness to your homeschool, and it adds a lot of the fun. Okay, next you might hear about something called the HSLDA, and that stands for Homeschool Legal Defense Association. This is an association that a lot of homeschooling parents will join because if they ever get into any kind of trouble with their county or their state, there are lawyers that are ready to help those who are members of the HSLDA. It's a yearly membership that you pay for, and they have a lot of resources also, not just the legal defense side, but they will also send you a teacher ID so you can get the same benefits that teachers would get. And they also send out lots of articles and news related to homeschooling. So that is a really good resource. You might hear about the HSLDA and be encouraged to join it. Okay, next is the morning basket. A lot of people want to know what morning basket is, what it means, and what, morning time is. That's another way that you might hear about it. There's usually two different camps when it comes to the morning basket. So it's always something done in the morning, clearly, but for some people, morning basket is kind of waking the brain up, getting kids ready to get the school day started. They might start with a fun activity or a brain teaser. They might start with a read aloud, and then their morning lessons, whatever subjects that the parent is deciding to do in the morning. So that would be their morning basket. For other families, the other camp, which my family falls into the second camp, our morning basket time is our morning family devotion time. So this is when we gather together, we pray, we read the Bible, we sing hymns together, and it's a good time to just get together and do that. Sometimes after that, we'll do our read aloud if we're not doing it in the evening. Morning basket is usually either basically morning lessons and getting ready for the day, doing a fun activity, or it's a morning devotion time for the family. Either way, you can choose if you'd like to do a morning basket for your family. A lot of people do it, but it's not required. The last bit of terminology I want to tell you about are evaluation methods. So the two you might hear about is the portfolio and standardized testing. So the portfolio is basically keeping bits of work from your students' schooling throughout the year in different subjects. You might want to keep a piece from the beginning of the year, from the middle of the year, and from the end of the year to show progress. It's not like all of their work has to be kept in their portfolio, just samples from each subject. something that shows progress. A standardized test is something that you usually will have to pay for and is administered by a certified teacher or a certified administrator that can administer that test to students. Oftentimes you'll have to take your student to a certain school where the test is being administered, and you can have them take the standardized test. A lot of us who are public schooled are familiar with that already, but if you're not familiar, it's just a way to measure your child's progress. So you may choose to do a portfolio or a standardized test if your state allows it, but some states will require a standardized test, so you'll want to look into what your state requires. I hope this quick guide to homeschooling lingo and terminology was helpful for you. I have another video where I talk about everything you need to know to get started with homeschooling, so you can check that out now. Or I have a whole homeschooling playlist that you can also check out. Please subscribe if you haven't. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next time.